It's easy to say yes to the things that matter to you, but the hard part is saying no to everything else that does not matter. And when we are talking that the society fundamentally needs to change, we need to question everything that we've learned from this society. And to everyone who has above a certain level of comfort, above a certain level of luxury, more comfort and more luxury cannot be the purpose or the meaning of their life. To meet your soul's purpose requires letting go of your mind's dreams. A common problem that everyone is facing, almost everyone is facing, is a crisis of meaning. Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to the Unlearning Playground podcast. This is your host, Chetan Narang, and I'm super psyched about the first episode of season 2 of the Unlearning Playground podcast. This is where the Unlearning Playground takes itself to a different level altogether. And this is a new format that I'm experimenting with. These are going to be long form videos, like you can already see from the length of today's episode. But do not be scared. I think we'll dive deep into one fundamental question in every single episode. And the format that I'm experimenting with is going to be one where I take logical pauses at the end of every section. So while this is a complete episode recorded in a single sitting, I have taken logical pauses in between, almost like you would take when you're having a deep conversation with someone. So for this entire hour or so, we'll sit in almost a meditation session with each other, talking very deeply about one single fundamental question and taking logical pauses in between so that we can sit and digest what we've already consumed. That said, if you want to consume all of this in a single sitting, be my guest. I would love nothing more than that. And I hope you get to enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. I'll see you in the playground and let's get into it. Well, I guess we're in season 2 then. The question that we are pondering over, that we're digging deep into in today's episode, is one that is fundamentally important to all of existence. And that is, what is the purpose of life? Now, I think this is something that is fundamentally important, at least in this day and age, especially in this day and age, even though paradoxically we may think that this is a question that is abstract, this is a question that has no practical answers that can be applied to our day-to-day lives. But I think this is something deep and we need to talk about it, even if you do not see a utility straight away in it. And this is something I've talked about even previously in season 1. I love this quote from Swami Vivekananda where he says, utility is not the test for truth. Rather, we should look to arrange our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truths we keep finding. So if something that is true is not applicable to your life somehow, maybe it is how you have arranged your life that is wrong. And that is what needs some work on. So along that spirit, let's dig into it. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is, why is this important? Why is this topic important to be discussed today? I think it's fundamentally important because we live in a day and age where maybe the broadest problem that humanity is facing, or rather a common problem that everyone is facing, almost everyone is facing, is a crisis of meaning, a crisis of purpose. And this is something that people are facing both in the East and the West. The West has, for a good few number of years now, looked up to the East to give it philosophical answers. The East has, for quite a number of years now, looked up to the West to give it, I think, some practical answers, especially with regards to money, technological development, etc. And I think we're at a stage as a world, as a human species, that both these cohorts are facing a crisis of meaning now. And I think that is happening because, see, I'm from India, born and brought up in India, and I've seen the India from 90s change quite a lot, especially in terms of amenities, especially in terms of technological developments. We are mirroring what the West has. So India, at least the developing cities within India, have almost all the comforts, all the luxuries that you get in the West. Sometimes even more because of our population, but whatever. And this is a situation that the West has been facing for quite a number of years now. Therefore, I think we are at a stage at our development, at our evolution as a society, that there was a time maybe that luxury for your current generation and for your future generations was a good enough life purpose, was a good enough purpose to get you motivated and get you up in the morning, to get you to go to all the work that you have to do, etc. I think we have reached a stage where, as a society, we have all the luxury that we needed. We have all the comforts that we needed. I'm not saying everyone in our society does. Of course, there is inequality. There is there is going to be imbalance in how many people get to have that luxury and that comfort. But I'm not digging into that right now. We have a lot of comfort as a society in this day and age. And to everyone who has above a certain level of comfort, above a certain level of luxury, more comfort and more luxury cannot be the purpose or the meaning of their life. And therefore, in this modern age, we are facing a crisis of meaning wherein what used to drive us earlier no longer drives us. There is hardly any incentive, especially from a deep fundamental standpoint, to keep going to work. I keep thinking about this example, and this is a format that I'm going to follow over the course of my podcast going forward, that I'm going to be talking about things that I actively meditate on. If I go to some hill station in India, I always wonder how much effort would it have taken from whoever did it to actually cut through all the mountains and prepare all of the roads that take us to the hilltop, and then get all the heavy machinery that was supposed to be placed there to actually have all the shops and all the homes built, etc. It must have taken a tremendous amount of monumental effort to do that. And that might have driven a lot of people, right? Just this simple fact that if we spend our time, our precious time, cutting through this mountain and preparing a proper road and whatnot, my sons, my daughters, all the future generations will actually find it easier to navigate these roads, to actually reach the hilltop. Just a simple example of what I mean by, there was a time when we needed to invest a lot of effort towards comfort. And now, consider a person living in a developed city in the West or in the East. The kind of work that we do now, I think the highest level of work that all of us are engaged in these days are in, let's say, technical companies, technological companies, companies that are dealing with newer technologies being built or using existing technologies to provide some sort of service, some sort of business. And the core purpose of almost all of such companies has become to become a bigger company, to make more money, to have more shareholder value. Some of the good ones, or let's say a lot of companies to some extent also focus on how good their employees feel. At least now they have started to do that. But that is still not the core purpose of any work anymore. A lot of work anymore. And therefore, it does seem to me that getting up and going to a job, for anyone who likes to think deeply about their life, is going to be hard. It's going to feel meaningless, because the work that you're about to do has become an end in itself. It's not a means to a bigger end anymore. It's not a means to something bigger than you anymore. Even if it is, something bigger than you is limited to the company or the shareholder whose billions you turn into more billions, right? And therefore, I think this is a time when we're all facing a crisis of meaning. We're all facing a crisis of purpose, especially people who have comforts, especially people who have luxuries. I'm assuming if you're listening to this on any podcast platform or on YouTube also, you have a good internet connection, you're understanding English. I'm assuming you fall into the cohort of people with some level of luxury, some level of comfort in their lives. And therefore, I think this is a conversation that you need to have too. If you're not, if this doesn't interest you, it still doesn't make it any less true. But it's up to you to keep yourself engaged in it. So this is where I'll pause and we'll go into the next section in a minute. Now then, when we talk about the purpose of life, I think there are two modalities that we should consider. The modalities of being and becoming. Being, in a sense, means just being in the world. Let's say surrendering to the will of life, just being, not becoming anything, not striving to achieve anything. This is the being portion of our lives. And what is the purpose of simply being? Why should we simply be? Or how should we simply be? That's one aspect that we should consider. And the second aspect is becoming. What should we strive to achieve? What should we strive to do? What is the purpose that you should look forward to when you think about or act on becoming something or someone in this life? So those are the two modalities that we would be considering when we are talking about this purpose. So let's start with being. When I talk about being, I want to first differentiate between life with a small l and life with a capital L. What do I mean by that? See, there is each individual being, everyone who's listening to this right now, everyone who's connected to whoever is listening to this right now, these are all individual life forms. Let's call them life with a small l. And then there is all of life, life with a capital L. That includes all the beings, all the living forms, all forms of life, all the non-living beings too. Because like philosophers have always said, wherever there's a rock, just watch out. Just watch out. It's going to turn lively soon. Everything is full of life, right? And that life is life with a capital L. Now, I'm talking about these two distinct aspects because I think in this day and age especially, we have started to live as if life with a small l, that is my life, your life, somebody else's life, life with a small l, is fundamentally separate from life with a capital L. And that is one way of living in this world. And believe you me, we have explored that way of living in this world for quite a few number of years now. And that has led us to where we are right now. We think of our life as completely separate from all of life. And therefore, our aim becomes one of trying to one-up all of life, trying to conquer nature as we speak. And also conquer each other around us. Always one-up the other person. Not thinking of others as another expression of the same life. Let's dig deeper into that. I want to dig deeper into that. When I say each life with a small l, is connected to each life with a capital L, for some of you it may be absolutely fundamental and absolutely easy to digest. But for a lot of us, it's not. Because we are not used to thinking of life in such a broad perspective, at least thinking of our life in such a broad perspective. So here is a visualization I tend to give out, and this usually lands. Let's see if this lands today too. The next time you see an infant, you see a little baby, realize that I'm not wrong when I say that that baby was just a few moments ago, just a few days or weeks or months ago, was fundamentally, intimately connected to its mother in the most intimate way possible, right? That's true. We've seen that. All of us have seen that, right? Just in that sense, realize that that mother, just a few years ago, especially on the cosmic scale, that was just a few moments ago, she was intimately connected with her mother in the most intimate way possible, similar to this infant that you're seeing right now. And you can take that recursion all the way back till you come to a visualization that each and every one of us, each and every one of the people you see around you, the animals you see around you, the plants, the trees, all the different life forms you see around you is and was intimately connected with each other, is and was intimately connected with that fundamental source of life. And while it's very hard to put a name to it, but that's what our religious and spiritual endeavor has always been. People have called that source of life God. I do not like to use that word anymore because I find it to be really polluted. Because whenever you use the word God, it always brings an image into your mind. An image that is preconceived with all the biases, all the learnings that your parents and your teachers and the entire society has imparted into you. And when we are talking that the society fundamentally needs to change, we need to question everything that we've learned from this society. We need to unlearn everything that we have ourselves given into this society. And now we kind of need to separate that Velcro, as my friend Rocco keeps telling me. So this visualization is something fundamentally what I mean when I say that every single life form, life with a small l, is intimately connected to every single life form, or rather with life with a capital L. And once you realize this, once you internalize this, I do not know if it will have an immediate effect on what you do, but it definitely has an immediate effect on how you look at life. It's like something opens up in your mind. Something opens up in your way of thinking, in that you understand that whatever you were doing so far, however you were doing it so far, was limited. However you were looking at the world was limited. And that is fundamentally what we need to focus on when we are talking about being. Remember the two aspects that we talked about, being and becoming. Being is what I'm talking about right now. And fundamentally what we need to focus on when we're talking about being, when we're talking about the purpose of life from the perspective of being, we need to talk about how we feel when we think about life as a whole. How we feel when we think about our life in relation to life as a whole. And that is the entire project of spiritual health, honestly. If we were to say that mental health concerns life with a small l, how do you react to your life situations, everything that is happening in and around you? How do you react? How do you get better at dealing with your life situations? If all of that is mental health, spiritual health is just a distant cousin, a rather elder cousin who is neglected in 2023 in the modern age. But that is where we fundamentally need to see that this is important. We need to understand how we visualize our life with respect to all of life. And that is the part I want to focus on. So this, when I say that you are intimately connected with all of life, this is a way of looking at life, not doing anything differently, but just being different in the world. Do you get that? Just being, just understanding that you belong here. You are one with everything, literally everything. And this is the understanding that Buddhism, Hinduism, and most of Eastern philosophy wanted to teach every single human being who was kind of psyched about it. Be one with everything is something that is considered to be the highest teaching of the Buddha. That is what is meant when we talk about enlightenment, nirvana, when we talk about things like Tattvamasi, you are it. When we talk about things like Aham Brahmasmi, I am God, I am Brahma. Because you're one with everything. And when I say everything, I mean with life, with that source of life. You're one with it. You're not distinct from it. That is what Advaita Vedanta means. Non-duality. Non-dual. There is no two. There's just one. All of life is one continuous process. And you're one with it. So, this is an aspect of your life that you need to understand to broaden your perspective about how you understand your life in relation to all of life. And I think one modality that I want to talk about that I've noted down here is when this gets internalized in you, one very easy to understand side effect is that you very quickly understand that nothing in your life, you're supposed to be ashamed of nothing in your life, because everything is the way it was supposed to be. You can simply be, you can simply surrender. So shame is such a big driving factor when we talk about our mental health, and a perspective that relieves you of all of shame, that makes you realize that you have nothing to be ashamed about, right? Especially when you look in the mirror and you understand that all the aspects of you, you're not supposed to be ashamed of them. You're supposed to just accept them, surrender. Surrender to the will of life with a small L and life with a capital L. And this is something that I remember talking to one of my clients, and she, after we had a very dense session like this, she came back and told me that I've been meditating frequently and I keep getting all of these thoughts. I keep feeling a lot of dense pain within me from way back in my childhood. And I keep experiencing pain that is even more intense compared to the pain that I would have felt when the actual incident happened. And she was experiencing a lot of different dense emotions, including shame, including pain, fear. She wanted to cry. And she was also experiencing jealousy. And she could feel that what she's feeling now appears to be more intense compared to what she was feeling back then. Of course, she has no way to objectively state that, but that's what her experience was at that moment. And what I explained to her was that this is actually healthy. I think she, in the process of becoming more self-aware, she was also becoming aware of the negative side of her personality, her shadow. And something that we do not quite understand is that something that Jung talked about when he said that no tree can reach up to heaven if its roots do not reach up to hell. So self-awareness works both ways. You cannot always just have the goody goodies, right? As and when you keep becoming more and more aware of what is good, what is positive, what is enriching about life, you also become more and more aware of what is negative about life. And both of these sine waves, the positives and the negatives, make up life. That is what life is, a sine wave, right? So this is what I would talk about when I would talk about being. And at this level, when we talk about being, when we talk about all of these different modalities of life forms being intimately connected with capital L life, the purpose of life with a capital L here, seems to be more life, isn't it? You see everywhere around you there is so much life, and there is always more life coming into the picture. So the purpose of life seems to me to be more life at one level. It seems to be better life at some level when we talk about evolution, when we talk about different life forms emerging from each other over the span of millions of years, of course, naturally at least. There are so many different life forms that have emerged that it does appear that the purpose of life, that singular process, that singular continuous process that we talked about, is more life and is better life. And believe it or not, human beings are at the topmost level of that life. And we have now reached a stage where human beings are conscious enough of what they are, who they are, and therefore they are also powerful enough, I should rather say, we are also powerful enough to have a say in evolution, to have a say in what direction does life take going forward. Life with a capital L and life with small l's as well, because they're all intimately connected after all. And this is the part where I would want to talk about becoming. What do you want to become? What direction do you want life to take? Your life and life with a capital L. So I'll pause here, and when we resume, we'll talk about becoming. All right, we are back. And I think that discussion took some out of me. Have you ever had these kinds of moments that, you've had a dense conversation with someone, or even a dense meditation session sometimes, just sitting and meditating deeply about something, that you realize that you don't want to talk anymore. You just want to sit quietly. I know I have felt that quite a number of times. And before coming back and sitting on this chair here, I was kind of getting that same feeling again. There's a story that almost every time comes in my mind when I sit in front of my mic and I want to talk about something. I think I've shared that previously, but I'm going to do that again. There was once this guy who went to a lecture being given by a saint somewhere. And the saint was going on and on about life, the universe, everything, talking about so many aspects of life. He was at it. And it had been 2 hours since that guy had kept on talking about life. And our protagonist of the story, nudges the guy beside him and says, "Why is the saint lying so much?" The guy was offended and he said, "Come on, man, why would you say something like that? This guy is a saint. He's saying so many beautiful things. Why would you say that he's lying so much?" And this guy says, "Brother, he's been on for 2 hours. There is not that much truth in this life. He would have to lie." And this is so true, so fundamentally true. The real truths about life with a capital L, life with a small l, using the lingo that we've been talking about in this episode, there aren't that many truths really. But then again, the entire human enterprise is to try and express what we're feeling, what we're understanding, what we're experiencing in words. And words are always limited at that. But that's the human enterprise. What else do we have to do here anyway, right? What else do we have to become here? So I think this has layered very easily and very well into the topic of becoming. So when I talk about becoming is, if you think about it, the aspect of when we talk about what is the purpose of life, this is the aspect that almost everyone focuses on, isn't it? Because that's what we think about when we're talking about what is the purpose of life. We always consider our own singular life and we think, what is the purpose of my life? What do I have to do? What should I do next? What should I become next? Almost everyone thinks with this modality. But I wanted to bring the being part first because I think that is, it ebbs and flows. Your life ebbs and flows, and it's always going to be a culmination of being and becoming. Being meaning how you look at life, how you surrender to life, and becoming meaning how you cement a stance and you take your own will to achieve something for your own life with a small l, and for life with a capital L. So now we're talking about becoming. When we talk about becoming, I think each individual life also has a purpose. Each individual life form has a purpose. And this is where individual life forms differ from each other. And I would say especially this is where humans differ from other animals. Because this is true that every animal is born as an actuality, while a human being is born as a potentiality. This is something that has been said by various philosophers over so many years, and scientists too, of course, that what I mean when I say that human beings are a potentiality, that means you look at any animal. Let's talk about anyone, a zebra. A baby zebra born, I think within a day or two, the zebra starts to run. And it's hard-coded. It's not going to change what it becomes. It's going to be a zebra. I do not mean that human beings can become cats or dogs. I don't mean that at all. But what I mean is a zebra, an animal, its baby is an actuality. Within a few moments, its development is full and final. It'll still grow in its body. But each zebra is almost the same. Now, of course, each human being is also the same, but we human beings are much more plastic compared to other animals, in that our brains are much more plastic. And therefore, each human being has a different personality. Of course, I hope I'm not offending pet moms and dads here when I say that animals do not have personalities. Of course they do. They would differ in what their experiences have been and what they are fearful of, what they are um, what they like, what they dislike, etc. I hope so. I've not been around pets too much. But with human beings, the degree to which this variation comes into life is astonishingly different. So each and every human being, simply because of the fact that we are born unprepared for this world, we learn a lot more on the job, let's say. So if you look at a human baby, after a human baby is born, for the next 2, 3, 4, or even maybe even more years, or let's say at least for the first year or so, that baby is absolutely 100% dependent on its parents and its immediate family. It's only after a good few number of years that that human being can actually start to live a life like other human beings independently. And this is what I mean when I say that human beings are born with a potentiality and not an actuality. So every human being is a different expression of all of these different potentialities that are kind of hidden into our DNA and hidden into whatever we can become. And therefore, I think one way of looking at life, for each singular life form, for each singular human being, is that every single life form has a purpose. Every single life form, almost like life with a capital L, has various different holes in it. And it keeps springing all these different life forms to fill up those different holes. And every single life form every single human being has a hole that human can fill, and that is their purpose. That is one way of looking at life. When we talk about purpose, what is it that you want to become? What is the hole that you want to fill? So now this takes me back to what we talked about right at the very beginning, when we were talking about why we need to talk about purpose of life in this day and age. What we want to become in our lives, what we are here to become, is such a tricky thing to find out, isn't it? And especially in the modern age, especially for people who have all the comfort, we're so busy, aren't we? Modern life is so busy. I remember just this past week I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was, of course, talking about how his work keeps him so busy that when he's free, or rather when he's in a meditative mood, he can sense that there is something more to life. There is something more to what he is doing right now. That there is something else that he should be focusing on right now. But then his work consumes him so much that he's not able to focus on that. And this is a problem that I think a lot of us feel. A lot of us modern humans living in developing cities, in developing nations, because of all the different advancements around us. Paradoxically, these developments, I think, should have been, and rather would have been, started with the idea of having more time for us humans to actually work on things that matter to us. But paradoxically, they have consumed us so much that what we want to do, what we really, really feel like doing, is the last thing in our priority right now, because there is so much important work to do, isn't it? And therefore, when we talk about what is your purpose, how do you find the purpose that you as a distinct life with a small l is here to accomplish, the first and foremost task for you, if your current life is so busy, is to make time for this. And that is what I advised my friend too. He wanted to understand what is his purpose in life, as if I could have answered it. Of course I cannot. No one can for you. So the only way I could answer it for him was that if your work is right now consuming 10 to 12 hours of your waking life, try to cut it down by at least an hour or two. Find that time for yourself, because you're supposed to, you need to, you clearly have that need to. So if you are one of those people who has an extremely busy schedule, weekdays, weekends, mornings, evenings, nights, there is no end to the work, to the all important work that you do, find time. Try and find actively at least 1 to 2 hours a day where you can actually just sit and find time to at least start to meditate on this, on what is your purpose. That will be step number 1. step number 2 is something that I talked about in a very recent reel, a very recent short video that I shared on all of my platforms. It is that we do not really find answers to such general questions. Because if you keep asking what is the purpose of life, what is the purpose of life, I think almost all of us firstly ask it very dishonestly. And secondly, we ask it with the attitude of, I just hope someone comes over and just gives me a damn answer and I'll be done with it. I'll be done with the search. That is not how you get an answer. And I think you do not get an answer also because you're asking a very general question. What is the purpose of life? The answer that you'll receive will only be what resonates with your already limited set of ideas that you have in your mind. And therefore, first and foremost, you need to get better at asking better questions. Some of the questions, more fundamental questions that you need to ask should be very specific, should be very direct. And then you need to have the time, of course, to sit with these questions, to sit with the answers that are coming up in you for those questions. And what are those questions? I have written them down somewhere. Yeah, this is a beautiful one. What does love look like to me? Almost all of us in today's day and age operate from a stance of fear. And whenever we talk about love as well, the only image that springs up in our minds is one of romantic love. That's not the love that I'm talking about in this question. When I say what does love look like? When I say what does love look like, I mean, if you really understand the being part that we talked about initially, if you really digest it, there is an intimate connection that you feel with all of life that human beings have best expressed through the word love. That is the emotion we feel when we feel just immensely overflowing with gratitude and happiness and joy and that state of wanting to give, not receive more, but give. And that is love. And when I say ask yourself what does love look like, ask yourself what is there that you have to give to the universe. What is it that you have to give to life? Life with a capital L. And I know I'm being deliberately very grand when I say what does love look like. You do not have to be so grand all the time. Of course, you can also start, and not just you will start with your immediate surroundings. And therefore, maybe ask yourself what is it that I have to give to the people around me, to the ones that I'm connected with via my work, via my family, via my friends, via my community, via my maybe city, state, country, maybe even the world, and then keep taking that wherever your meditation sessions take you. But that is one question to ask. What does love look like? The next one would be, what change do I want to see in the world? And this is fundamentally important. This is, in fact, one of the questions that I had been sitting with for so long now. And this is another funny part. There's this guy, Rumi. I am sure you would have heard his name somewhere. All of the love quotes that are shared throughout Instagram in the name of Rumi. They could have been Rumi's quotes. They would have been Rumi's quotes, in fact. But the funniest thing that I've ever read about Rumi was that all the quotes, rather, you're mature when you realize that all the quotes of Rumi's that you were hearing, that you were reading on Instagram, you're mature when you understand that those were not about your childhood love. And that is so true. Because what I'm about to tell you is a quote of Rumi's and how an interpretation of that quote made me a mature person. That quote was, what you seek is seeking you. What you seek is seeking you. I remember back in the day, maybe this was a good 5-6 years ago, when I first came across that quote, what I understood from that quote was something that is, let's say, that is true to some extent in life, that what you seek is seeking you. There is sort of a circular dependency in all of life. What you seek is also seeking you. For example, if you're seeking somebody's love, there is somebody out there who's seeking your love. And therefore, there is this circular dependency in the sense that what you seek is seeking you. But that is absolutely not what Rumi meant when he said that. What Rumi meant when he said that, of course, I don't know Rumi, but I would want to think that he meant something higher and deeper than that. And when I reached that deeper interpretation, I prescribe it to Rumi too, that the dude meant this when he was saying that. What he meant was, what you seek is seeking you to manifest it. What you seek, what change you want to see in this world, it is that change calling you out. It is life calling you out to manifest that change. And therefore, this is a question to sit. This is a question to sit within your meditation sessions. What change do I want to bring in this world? What change do I feel is fundamentally necessary and absolutely needed in the world right now? And again, your extent of the world can be your own village, your own city, your own school, your own college, your own family, your own home, your own office, or it can be your country, it can be your continent, it can be the earth, it can be life. Take it as much as you want, take it as much grand as you want it to be, but sit honestly with the answers that appear in your own consciousness when you sit with these questions. That is life telling you that this is your purpose right now. Act on it. Have the courage to act on it. And what are the questions? Oh, this is something that I really, really want to talk about. The questions that we ask are what we receive the answers to. That's just a tautology, right? That is where I said that when you're asking general questions, we kind of ask them dishonestly anyway. But there is one more modality of asking questions which I think we need to outgrow. And that is this almost lazy attitude of keeping questions such as, how do I pass my time? What should I do? What should I pick up as my next hobby? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with simply passing your time or having another hobby. But if that is what you're looking for an answer, if those are the questions that you're looking an answer for, those are the questions you will receive an answer for. And that is where we kind of again perpetuate that cycle of purposelessness. Because while your hobbies can develop into meaningful, purposeful life at times, it's almost always that when we're talking about how do I pass my time, how do I pick up another hobby, you will receive answers such as, oh, travel the world. That is my passion now. I want to travel the world. I'm not dissing on people who like to travel. I like to travel too. But if you can, don't let it be the purpose of your existence. Don't let these questions define the purpose of your existence. We can be more grand than that. So that is one thing I wanted to talk about. We get answers to the questions we ask, and therefore we need to ask better questions. And this is something that I say because I have been having a lot of very deep conversations with a lot of people, and people who I do not have deep conversations with, from my work, from my family, in fact, from my friends as well, from all of my community, they feel that this YouTube channel, this podcast is my hobby. And there are times when it boils me up. It almost always cracks me up, but there are also times when it boils me up, when I think that this is not a hobby. I'm not doing this for hobby. This is the purpose of my life right now. This is what life is calling me out to do. And therefore, this is not my hobby. But of course, you project your own lenses on top of whatever you see out there. And therefore, because everyone is only looking for, outside of work, everyone is only looking for hobbies or time pass activities. That is what they feel like they should. That is what they feel like everyone else is also doing. I remember this one dude in my gym who was talking to me about my podcast and said, this is a good way to pass your time here. I think you're doing good. You're doing a good job. And while I thanked him, he had also talked to me about how he finds it kind of absolutely purposeless to do anything right now, including his work, of course. But then he congratulated me on having found a good time pass. And I told him these very things that I'm telling you right now, that it really does depend on the perspective that you bring to the table. If what you're looking for is a way to pass your time, you will get answers about how to pass your time. If you're looking for a purpose, if you're looking to add more meaning to your life, if you want to be deeper in your life, then you will get answers to what can deepen your life, what can deepen your existence. And therefore, you need to get better at asking better questions. And how do you do that? How do you act on it? This is the part that is fundamentally important. Again, something I talked about very recently in one of my short videos, that something that has helped me immensely has been writing. Just pick a pen and paper and start to write. Scribble your thoughts. And what I find absolutely amazing about this practice is that it's so simple, but it almost forces you to organize your thoughts. If I were to, there are so many people whose thoughts wander all over the place. It's the natural state with almost all of us now. There are so many thoughts in our minds, right? Because there are so many inputs going into our minds: Instagram feeds, LinkedIn, Facebook, emails, newsletters, podcasts, YouTube, whatever. There are so many inputs going into our minds, and therefore our minds keep throwing random thoughts all day long. And if in such a state of mind, if I ask you to simply sit and meditate, what will happen is your thoughts will wander all over the place, and maybe you sit for an hour. I do not imagine such a person sitting for an hour in meditation, but whatever. If you sit in meditation, it's only going to be like your normal walking, waking life. You will just be thinking about overthinking. And therefore, what I prescribe initially for everyone is to pick a pen and paper or open up your laptop and your notes app and just start to write. Scribble your thoughts. And you will see that if you're someone who overthinks, if you're someone who gets random thoughts all over the place, when you start to write, you will have to organize your thoughts. And even if your first 5, 6, 7 pages are absolute garbage, by the 8th page, you're very likely to actually have a real solution to the question that you were asking. Or you might have the real question that you need to answer. And this is something personally important for me, because this is what helped me shape Unlearning Playground 2.0. I was in a stage just a few weeks ago when I was feeling quite lost. I was feeling like this is the end of a cycle for me, and I have outgrown the way I was sharing whatever I was sharing so far, and I need to do something different. And there were so many different thoughts in my mind that I could not sit honestly with questions or answers. And this is what I did. I wanted some peace, some quiet for myself. So there's a nearby library where I just went, and the only intention that day was to have my internet off, to have all of my devices off, just a diary and my pen, and I'll just write. And that is what happened. I started scribbling. I thought I had a few questions that I needed an answer to, but by the end of the I think 20, 25 odd minutes or even an hour or so, I actually had better questions that I wanted answers to. And believe me, by the end of the day, I also had answers to them. And therefore, I prescribe writing to everyone. Everyone who can write should write. And, yes, so quite a dense talk about becoming. I have also written something that I want to say out loud, that there are no wrong branches on this tree, but maybe there are, the ones based out of fear. We already talked about this. Now, another aspect that we should talk about, or rather let's take a little break here. Let's come back in another 5 seconds or so. All right, so we are back for the final section of today's episode. And what I want to talk about in this section is something that you already know, but I think I should stress more on that because it's something that is slightly tricky, more tricky than what we feel it is on the surface. And that is, none of us has a single purpose in life. I don't know if the English came out well, but what I meant was, we do not have one single purpose in our life. Or rather, one single purpose for an entire lifetime. It's like that quote from I don't know who was that Egyptian dude, Heraclitus or something, Egyptian or whatever, some very old philosopher who said that no man steps into the same river twice, for it's not the same river and it's not the same man. That is to say, we are more a verb than we are a noun. We are a continuous process. While at each point in our process, at each point in our life, we like to think of ourselves as fixed entities. We're not really as fixed as we would want or imagine ourselves to be. And therefore, at any moment in your life, you can get a certain answer to a question, to those questions that we talked about today, that would resonate a lot with you at that moment. But then there will come a time in your life when that answer does not resonate at all. And therefore, you need to let go of it. And an example that you can find in the animal kingdom about it is how a snake sheds its own skin, its old skin. Almost like just shedding it away, it's going to be an uncomfortable process, of course. But then, if it does not shed its old skin, the new skin cannot appear. And very similar to it, we have different purposes at different stages in our lives. And we need to be mature enough, we need to have enough discernment within us to understand what is resonating with the core of our being at the moment. And if something that used to resonate with us a lot back in the day and doesn't anymore, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to life, you owe it to life with a small L and life with a capital L, to unlearn your attachment to those sticky ideas and proceed ahead. And also, one more aspect of not having just one purpose in life is the fact that all of us play so many different roles throughout our lives, right? I mean, we are born into a family, so we are children. We are related to our cousins, our uncles and aunts. We are partners for someone, lovers for someone. We are siblings for someone. We are co-workers, colleagues for someone. We are managers for someone, employees for someone, whatever. But there are so many different roles that we play throughout our lives. At even a single moment in our life, we are playing so many different roles. And each of those roles comes with a purpose. If you think deeply about your relationship with that person or that community that you have a relationship with, you will realize that at every moment, life calls on to you to deliver a certain purpose in that relationship. And this is where it gets tricky. We know this. I know you know this. Everyone knows this. We are not just one individual. We have so many different roles. Every single role brings its own responsibilities and its own purposes. But it gets tricky because in the modern age, we are so busy with our lives and with all the different webs that we have spun around our lives that it gets hard to pick the ones that are really important to us. I'll say that again. It becomes harder for us to pick the ones that are really important for us. Because even though they are important, we have spun so many webs around our lives, be it with regards to all the different luxuries that we're seeking, all the different comforts that we're seeking, all the more money that we want to build, all the more career that we want to grow into, that things that are more fundamentally important to us with regards to the different roles that we play, we do not have any time left for them. I remember reading this on Instagram once. I think the account was The Purposeologist. The guy's name is Alexander. He writes beautifully. You should check out that account. One of his best quotes that I came across was when he said, "It's easy to say yes to the things that matter to you, but the hard part is saying no to everything else that does not matter." And isn't that true in our day-to-day life, in our modern day-to-day life? Because there are so many things calling up for our attention all the time that it's very hard to say no to them even if they don't matter to you, because they get you. They get your attention and they hook you up even before you get to say no. And therefore, practicing mindfulness, practicing actively meditating on deeper thoughts, deeper conversations you can have with yourself and with others is a modality that you need to consider. This is what I wanted to talk about too. So, there is this one more quote I've written. This is so beautiful and it conveys everything that I just talked about. To meet your soul's purpose requires letting go of your mind's dreams. This is from Cory Muscara or Muscara, I don't know. Another guy I looked up on Instagram, and he also writes and talks beautifully. You should check out his account too. To meet your soul's purpose requires letting go of your mind's dreams. So true, isn't it? Our mind is so hooked up with whatever we have in store right now for us, whatever society, we as a society have instilled into our own minds, that your soul's purpose, your deeper calling, is almost clouded and it's almost fading away from your conscious attention. And therefore, the first and foremost step that I talked about was bring it back. Take out time for yourself. Take out time for your deeper self. This is also something that, let's say, if I ask people who talk with me, take up one-on-one sessions with me to take time for yourself, what they understand from it is usually, I need to plan my next travel. I need to plan my next holiday from work and I'll go visit Bali or Singapore or Thailand and whatnot. It's right. You have to do all of that, right? But that's not what I mean when I say find time for yourself. What I mean when I say find time for yourself is on a daily basis, on a periodic basis, spend some time actively to let your deeper self come to the surface. And it comes with all the ebbs and flows, all the positives and negatives. Like I said before, no tree can reach the heaven without its roots touching the hill. But you have to do that. That is what it means to find time for yourself. Actively meditate. Spend some time actively seeking answers to those deeper questions that we talked about. And that is how you find your purpose in life. In closing, I think I would also talk about one more thing, that I recently had a very, very deep conversation with a friend of mine. And we were talking about, especially from the Indian context, that these deeper questions will be answered in our next generation. That's what his point was. He says that I believe our parents, we both belonged to middle class households in the 90s in India. And he says our parents didn't have any luxury at all to even think about the purpose of life and whatnot. And while that is somewhat not really true for me, my dad, in fact, had a much more luxurious life compared to my life, because our financial condition when I was a kid was not good. He lived in a prime time for himself. But anyhow, my friend's point was that as middle class households, our parents did not have luxuries, and therefore they could not even think about deeper questions. They didn't have the time. And I concur to that. That's of course the case, as a generalization, of course. And then he goes on to say that our parents worked so hard for us to have comforts and luxuries. And now the next generation is the one that's going to be able to act on those aspirations and those dreams and those deeper senses. And I say that's a load of bullshit, because it's of course true that with each coming generation we keep expanding our levels of consciousness and our levels of understanding and acting in the world. But if you are at an age where you understand that more comfort is not what you really seek, you owe it to yourself to act on it right away. You're supposed to. But what stops even him and everyone else is fear of not having enough luxury for those kids who do not even exist right now. And this is so funny in one sense, but so deep in another sense, isn't it? What I told him was, this is something that I sit with in my meditation sessions, that the sacrifice of my parents' generations was maybe that, look, we sacrificed our life for you. As parents, we sacrificed our lives for our children. And we didn't even think about how we can actualize in our life, how we can find our life's purpose, because we didn't have the time. We had to work so hard for you. And I do not want to go into the depths of self-sacrifice, but it gets toxic very soon, especially self-sacrifice that is not asked for, self-sacrifice that is eventually then expected out of the other person too. But my point is, my parents' generation says that their greatest sacrifice was sacrificing their life for us. And if we go into our generation, the next generation, with the idea that our next generation is going to be able to act on their dreams and aspirations and their deeper callings because of all the comfort that we'll leave them with, I think the sacrifice of our generation will become, look, I had to keep doing these shitty jobs, these meaningless, purposeless jobs for hours on end, just so that you could find your life's purpose and act on it. So you better act on it. And I don't have to explain to you how that will get toxic very soon. And again, isn't that paradoxical in itself? Because if you did not act on your deeper callings, if you did not have the courage to come out of whatever it is that limits you from acting out your deepest understanding, how do you expect to raise a child to do that? That child will do that despite of what you teach him or her, not because of what you teach him or her. And therefore, I think your fundamental responsibility in this generation, if you are listening to this, if you are someone who understands what I'm talking about, all the ideas of being and becoming, you're supposed to act on it right now. And if the only thing that is stopping you is time, if the only thing that is stopping you is fear, if the only thing that's stopping you is priority, you know what you have to do. You have to find time for it, because this is the priority of your soul. This is the priority of life. Life with a capital L. Well, okay then. Thank you so much for staying with me till here. I want to say that I had a great time recording this episode. I think it was also obvious from the kind of conversation I was having. I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope you also realized that when I talked about being and becoming, being is maybe consistent for all of us. How it manifests may be different, but becoming is definitely different for all of us. And I hope you could see that this is my becoming. This is what I want to become as of now. If I put it into words, maybe I want to become a better teacher, a teacher at whom you can bounce your fundamental deepest questions, and a teacher who can direct you, a teacher who can help you navigate those murky waters. And this is fundamentally important to me because when I talked about that Rumi quote, what you seek is seeking you, I understand that when I was looking for a direction, this is a good few years ago, what I wanted, what I really sought out was a teacher. I was looking for a teacher. And I had teachers from all the books that I read, all the Osho and Alan Watts and Ram Dass and JK, Sam Harris, all of these different philosophers, all of these different very wise men who taught me a lot of different things. But I was seeking a teacher, a physical teacher, and a live teacher in front of me to whom I could bounce off questions. So I understand that what you seek is seeking you is absolutely true for me, because right now I'm trying to manifest that teacher that I was seeking when I was a student. So if any of this resonates with you, if any of what I talked about resonated with you, help me reach out to more of my students. Help me reach out to more people who might have questions that I might be able to help with. And your role in that is very simple. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, share it in your community, share it in your WhatsApp stories, WhatsApp groups, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you think this makes sense, just share it. And I'll see you in the playground the next time. Until next time, peace out.